Greetings and welcome. Welcome to Sustaining, Executing, and Leading Through COVID and Beyond. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. I would now like to turn the conference over to Gina Bryant. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hello and welcome. My name is Gina Bryant, and I am the webinar facilitator for the Best and Brightest Companies to Work For. Before we begin, I have a few announcements. Today's broadcast is eligible for 1 hour of continuing education credit with SHRM and HRCI. In order to receive your credit, please fill out the survey from SurveyMonkey that will be emailed to you later this afternoon. Our broadcast today is being recorded and will be available to view on the Best and Brightest website next week. If you have any questions during this broadcast, please use the chat feature you see in the lower left-hand portion of your screen. We will have time at the end to answer any of your questions. Today's webinar is Sustaining, Executing, and Leading Through COVID and Beyond. Our presenter today is John Ninkovich, founder and CEO of Performix Group. John has taken his company an active role with an organization working with CEOs, business owners, and leadership teams to focus on strategic planning and execution, leadership team development and alignment, and executive advisories. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I would now like to turn this call over to our presenter, John. Go ahead, John.
Thanks, Gina, and hello to everybody. I hope everybody's well on this Tuesday afternoon, and I'd like to thank my friends at Best and Brightest for the opportunity to spend some time with their organization, people that are part of it. So let's jump in. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what are some of the things that organizationally we need to do to continue to move through COVID and continue to move our businesses forward. And I've been doing this work for quite a while, and as COVID has created challenges for everybody, I do quite a bit of speaking, and as I started to kind of change the things I was talking about a little bit about in my presentations, because COVID is just doing such a wrench into everything that we do in our normal work life, that I kind of thought about, what's something equivalent that we could all really consider that's impacted us. And I don't know if anybody's read the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, but when I read that book years ago, I keep book summaries of everything that I read so that I can reflect back on that. As I went back and looked through some of the books that I had, this quote really popped out to me. And I think it's really where we're at today. And Viktor Frankl's story, if you haven't read the book, is about his experience in a Nazi concentration camp and how the terrible things that he saw, the torture, people that were dying and in despair, and all the things that he saw every day. He really realized that there was a lot about mindset and what were the things that he needed to do in order to be able to survive and move through that. And one of the things I think is important in today's world is that it's easy to lead when things are going well. But today we're in a time when there's so many uncertainties and unknowns. That's really when great leadership is most important. So Viktor Frankl's quote that forces beyond your control can take away everything you possess except one thing: your freedom to choose how you respond to the situation. You cannot control what happens to you in life, but you can always control what you feel and do about what happens to you. And I think that's all of us today. So my goal today is to spend some time with you talking about how to respond to what's happened to us all. So the three topics that we're going to talk about are, what are some specific things that you can do to continue to sustain through COVID? We're 5, 6, 7 weeks into COVID right now as a nation, and we're continuing to deal with it. Hopefully we're going to start to emerge out of this. Different states are emerging at different paces. We're in Michigan. We're probably another 15 to 30 days away from beginning to emerge. But what are the things that we need to do to sustain our business and our business environments through COVID? Then we'll talk about what are some of the barriers to growth that organizations experience. What do those look like? Where do they show up? And why do they show up? And then we'll talk about some specific things from a leadership perspective that leaders should really focus on. What should they spend their time on? And then how do I actually help my teams and people in my organization, how to help them be more productive through really creating a coaching environment, and what does that look like? So the one thing that I'd like to ask everybody is hopefully there's one thing you can take and implement from our time today, and hopefully you can use it later today in your normal course of your job or tomorrow. But my goal when I speak is to help provide some input and some thought leadership, that there's one thing you can take and implement. And if I can accomplish that, then I feel like I'm achieving my goal. So let's talk first about the most important priorities to sustain through COVID. And, the first thing and the most important thing is really continuing to take care of our employees. There's so many uncertainties, there's so many unknowns, that really continuing to focus on what that looks like and making sure that we're putting our people in positions to be successful, that we're putting our people in positions that they can continue to be safe, and that we're thinking about those things is really, I think, the most important thing that we can focus on as we continue to evolve and change our businesses as we deal with what the next 30, 60, 90 days is going to look like. And, one of the things that I think is important is to really understand, what does that really look like? So the Gallup organization is somebody I use their research quite a bit in my work, and they're in the last 4 to 6 weeks have created this employee engagement data set to really understand and provide organizations some input around what do the employees really think about whether or not you're taking care of them. So the first is that my employers communicated a clear plan of action in response to COVID-19. And so, I think it's important to create that clear plan of action, but I think that as we continue to move forward daily, weekly, monthly, that making sure that we're continuing to communicate a clear plan of action is really important today. And so I think being very thoughtful about continuing to communicate clearly. It's not one mechanism of communication. It's multiple times that we're communicating. The data out there is it takes the average person 7 times to hear what you said. So if we think about communicating a clear plan of action, that means that we have to be thoughtful about how we're doing that and creating communication strategies that we're constantly communicating that clear plan of action. The next is that people feel well prepared to do their job. And so, if you think about it, 60 to 70% of the workforce is working remotely today. And that's a big change for a lot of people. I think a lot of organizations have had remote work as a part of how they operate, but we've all been thrown into this very different world of remote work. And so that means that I'm working differently, I'm interacting with people differently. A lot of clients that I work with have actually streamlined their organizations. They've furloughed people, they've laid people off, they're combining jobs and roles. And so when that happens, then you're creating confusion in your organization. So from a leadership perspective, it's really important to take a step back and make sure that we're creating clarity, that people know exactly what it is they're responsible for and that they're prepared to do their job. Next is that my immediate supervisor keeps me informed about what is going on in the organization. And sorry, I have a typo, I didn't realize that. And why that's important is Gallup will tell you with their data that the reason that people leave organizations is because of their direct supervisor. So when we think about organizationally that we're communicating at the executive level, when I work with a lot of my clients, we're thinking about how do we communicate where we're going organizationally, what are maybe some of the new strategies that we're putting in place, how are we dealing with COVID, all those kind of things are happening in the leadership level, the executive level. But if I get to the next level down and I have a line leader or a manager that isn't communicating consistently or communicating something that's different, we're not creating clarity around where the organization is going, it's creating difficulty in the organization. So making sure that everybody in the organization is clearly communicating the most consistent, accurate, up-to-date information repeatedly. And then the last is the organization really cares about my well-being, and so that's making sure that we're not compromising our people. We're not putting them in positions that they feel that they're at risk, that they could be exposed to the virus. And so really thinking about those things and asking those questions and vetting the things that you do on a daily basis, a weekly basis, as part of your leadership and management of your organization, I think it's an important kind of focus area in using these questions will help you understand really where you need to go. And one of the things I like to talk about when we're using data and research is that if your employees were answering the 3 or 4 some of these questions, is I'd ask them, what would it take for you to answer 5? So they're starting to give you very specific areas of focus or action that they think are important, so they could answer that at 5. So then you can change some of the tactics or strategies that you're using in order to help your people or improve taking care of your employees. Next is, I think that I talk a lot about change management. I do a lot of change management work with my clients, and if you think about what we're going through from the COVID perspective, it's immense change. And when I work with my CEO clients and my business owners and their teams, I think one of the most important parts of growing a sustainable business is really getting good at change, and it's one of the biggest areas of improvement that I see. I know we have a lot of HR people on the call today, so this is probably stuff that that you use a lot and you're big proponents of it. But one of the things is really educating the people in the organization and our leadership about where are we at in the change process. And so that normal process it could be around COVID, which is thrown immense change for all of us, or it could be around a change in compensation plans. It could be a change in benefit costs, benefits, all those things that we deal with on a regular basis. Is that people go through this change management curve. And when I talk to leaders around change management, one of the things that happens, and here's an example. So when I work with my CEO clients around COVID and the impact of COVID, they went through this change management curve. Everybody goes through the change management curve, irrespective of your role. So as an example, when at the end of the year you get your new benefit costs and the costs go up 10 to 20% every year, senior leadership is going to go through this curve where they're shocked and surprised. They go through the whole curve. They go through depression, and then they get the commitment, which is, okay, what do we need to do to roll this out in our organization? How do we deal with these issues? And the same thing is happening around COVID as an example. So if you think about even at the executive levels of our government, the first couple of things that we started to hear was shock and surprise and denial that COVID wasn't going to impact us the way it had the rest of the world, and that changed very quickly. So then what happens is people get angry, then they start to negotiate. I'm not sure there's a lot of negotiating in the COVID world, but when we're dealing with change around other things that happen in business, a lot of times what happens is the people that want to negotiate oftentimes can be top performers. And when I talk to leaders around in management, around continuing to create a successful organization, there is no two set of rules. As an organization, the top performing organizations, what they get really good at is creating consistency about how they operate. So even though people want to negotiate and want to do things differently and want to keep doing things the way that they have because they're comfortable, that can't happen. And so we have to continue to move forward with that. What happens then is when organizations are going through this change, wherever that change is individuals go through depression, or what we like to call the valley of despair, and everybody goes there. And I think one of the most important things from a leadership perspective is to realize that we all go there, including the leader, but we can't stay there for very long. As a leader, our responsibility is to right the ship. So when things are bad, it's when we lead the most. And so it's realizing that, okay, I need to get out in front. I need to figure out the direction where we're going. I need to figure out what we're going to communicate to the organization. I need to take action. I need to take action now. So that is really part of the leadership journey. It's not staying in the valley of despair for very long. And then what happens is we start to drive change. Then people start to evaluate the situation. They start to try it, and then they get the full commitment. And the reality is that different people get through the change management curve at different speeds. Not everybody's going to get through the curve at the same speed. Oftentimes people can't get through the curve at all. And our job as leaders is to work to get people from one side of the curve to the other. And quite honestly, the people that can't make the change, they can't make the evolution to get from one side to the other, they don't get to stay a part of the organization. So it's really important that as leaders, we understand what our role is. Our role is to move people from one side of the curve to the other. We work really hard to communicate with people, understand them why they need to make that happen. But are realizing also that not everybody's going to make that change. And in my work with clients, one of the things that I see happening around change management is what I would consider this pandering to employees. So you're continuing to negotiate, you're continuing to pander to employees and make it okay not to make a change. And what happens is that really affects the abilities of the organization to continue to grow and evolve and sustain as an organization. So really getting committed to change management and getting people to understand the impact of change at the executive level is really important. And then 3 questions that I like to ask is, around change management: what's changing, what will be different because of the change, and who's going to lose what. And if I get really good at that all the time and making sure that my leadership of my organization is aligned and committed to the change, and everybody's kind of speaking from the same hymn book, the better we perform as an organization. So the next thing is really talking about taking care of your employees is really creating clarity. So top-performing companies today, top-performing organizations today are really focusing on priorities in 24-hour time frames, 7-day time frames, and 30-day time frames. So a lot of my work with clients, and I tend to work with small and mid-sized businesses up to $500 million, is a lot of those organizations, when I work with them, we're doing strategic planning. We do year-long strategic planning, and we break that up into 90-day segments, and every 90 days we're focusing on what are the most important priorities that we need to get done in the business in order to deliver our strategic plan. And the reality is nobody has 90 days of vision today. So my work with all my clients today is really in 30-day kind of buckets at a time. So what are the things that we have to get done in the next 30 days? Because quite honestly, we don't know what it looks like after 60 days. A lot of my clients have received PPP money, so they're really focused on what do they need to execute in the next 30 days to get to the following 30 days, and after that 60-day period of time, their PPP funds run out. So they're really focused on short-term durations right now, getting really clear on what are the most important things that need to happen in the next 30 days. They're creating meeting rhythms around those 30 days. They're meeting weekly to talk about what are the things we need to get done in the next 7 days to support our 30 days, and then getting together and creating clarity around what are the things we need to get done today. So it's really around getting alignment and priorities, clear priorities, and those kind of time frames. And it's really important, if you think about it, that we're not working in an environment where we're working together in an office environment. So we're all spread out all over the place. So making sure that we have real clarity around what are the things that we're doing and who owns those. What are the expectations and accountabilities around that? Those are the most important priorities today to create clarity for your employees, no matter the level of the employees. Next is communicating to the team. So, being very human and vulnerable around where we're at as an organization. I think it's okay to be truthful about we don't know exactly what the future looks like. We're going to be really good about communicating and making you aware of the best information that we have as soon as we do. So continuing to be human and vulnerable. Be consistent, lean into your people. A lot of times when we ask people what they need, I don't think they know what they need. So really being thoughtful about the questions that we're asking, asking how I can help, what specific things in their family can you assist with, how are they doing for being able to make a mortgage payment, all those different, difficult things that people are dealing with today. I think we have to lean into them even more and be creative and silly with our people. So, we're at a time where everybody's unsure, and I think having a little levity and being silly about the realities of what we're dealing with, I think is important today around communicating with the team and the people in our business, and we probably can't do that enough. Next, around communication is really one of the best things that I've seen in the last month is from a guy that was a turnaround guy, and he was turning around some very large organizations. And when he was turning around Continental Airlines, one of the things that they did is actually send out a weekly voicemail. They had 60,000 employees, and every Thursday night, the leadership team, the executive team of the business would get together and they talk about, okay, what are the things we need to get done in the business in the next 7 days? Again, going to those 7-day priorities. What are the things that we're going to get done in the next 7 days? Let's get real specific about what those are. And then tomorrow morning, the CEO is going to send a voicemail to everybody in the business. 60,000 people got a voicemail every Friday around, okay, what are the things that we accomplished in the last 7 days? So getting really specific about that. What do we work on in the next 7 days? So people had clarity around and communication from the senior-most leaders in the organization about where are we going, what do we get done, and doing it all the time. The next is really daily check-ins and check-outs. So as a standard part of my practice, I'm a big fan of getting organizations to do daily huddles, especially at the executive level. So we're creating alignment and team at the highest level of the organization. And so when we're doing that, we're talking about what's on your plate today. Everybody needs to come in that meeting with a clear understanding of where they need to get done today. Where are you stuck? So what do you need? What are the things that are creating difficulty? where do you need help? And then where do you need help is where do I need help from somebody in the organization or somebody in the room that can help me with that. It's a short, snappy meeting. It's a 15-minute meeting. It's facilitated by somebody in the room, not always the highest level ranking leader in the room, but it's facilitated all the time. And then a next best practice that's occurred, and I have a little bit of a graphical issue there, but out is, really at the end of the day, we're really around creating community, team, accountability around what's going on in the business. So what happened today, what issues have arisen, and what's the most impactful moment of the day. Again, another 15-minute check-in. And so we're creating this cadence of communication, clarity, priorities, transparency amongst everybody in the business. Obviously, this can happen within functions, happen at different leadership levels, but what are those things that we should be talking about at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, and continuing to drive that. Next is, let's talk about barriers to growth. So I do a lot of work with clients that are growing companies. I work with clients, again, from kind of startup to $500 million in revenue. And what we see in our work is there's kind of three barriers to growth that organizations tend to experience, and everybody's going to experience these. The first is infrastructure, the second is business focus, and the third, and the one we'll talk about today, and most important, is leadership and culture. And really what this graph represents is this interesting data. There's about 30 million companies that file tax return in the United States every year. And of the 30 million that file tax return, only 4% of companies get above $1 million in revenue and 10 full-time equivalents. So it's a really small segment of companies that get above that number. And if you're in the top 4%, you're really in rarefied air. It's kind of an amazing statistic, and it really goes to show you the driver of our gross domestic product is small business. And what this graph really talks about is that, and the thing to think about is that when you hit these barriers to growth, and a lot of times people think that it's revenue that's really an indicator of when you're going to hit a barrier to growth. And revenue is an indicator. Actually, the best indicator when you're going to hit a barrier to growth is actually a headcount. And so the more people that you have in your business, the more difficult it is for you to continue to execute consistently as an organization. It's just harder. And what the barriers also represent is that there's 1 million companies that get to the 10 full-time equivalents and $1 million of revenue, all the way to the right-hand side of the slide. There's 2,500 companies, which is the Fortune 500, Fortune 2000, that get to 1,000 FTEs and $500 million in revenue. And really, what the graph really points out is that for leaders and organizations to get from one level of performance to the next, it's never more the same. So, there's a book by a guy named Marshall Goldsmith who wrote a book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, and it really is represented on the slide here today. So the things that I do from a leadership perspective to get my business to the 10 full-time equivalents and $1 million in revenue, and I could start a business in my basement doing whatever, cutting grass or delivering staffing services or consulting services or advisory services or wherever it is. And, I can scrap a claw and get my business to 10 full-time equivalents and $1 million in revenue. But as I start to add more people into the business and the business gets more sophisticated, I really have to be able to evolve my skill set. And the hard part about this is, especially in small and mid-sized companies, is that that means that I really have to change almost kind of who I am and what I do and how I do it. And, a lot of times what you hear is that, why would I, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, from an ownership perspective. And while that a lot of the people I work with have been very successful, and then what tends to happen is the businesses that they start to work with start to peter out at that second or third level because they can't continue to evolve really how they think about building leadership and culture within the organization. And when I work with CEO clients, one of the things I really talk about with them is that when you're focusing on growing your business, that you don't get to delegate leadership creation and culture creation. There are enabling components of the business that help you drive those things, but those two components are a part of every CEO's or owner's, whatever that looks like, their job description. They have to own that. It's really important to continue to drive that. And again, that's a challenge when you have people that were really successful at those lower levels of performance. But as you continue to grow your business, and if you're not growing, you're dying, I then have to continue to evolve my skill set. It's also required that my leaders, my functional leaders or my leadership team, they have the same requirement. So I have to be able to operate differently and grow my capabilities as leader to get from one level of performance to the other. The other thing I like to talk about around this, and in my conversations with business owners and business leaders, is really kind of thinking about this, is that if you were going to build a house, you wouldn't put a shovel in the ground to build a house until you knew exactly what the house was going to look like. Until I had a complete blueprint of what the house was going to look like, how many bedrooms, the dimensions of the house, how many garage, how many parking spots in my garage, the colors, the electromechanical design, the detailed design, all that kind of stuff. Before all that is figured out, I can't get a permit to build my house. But when I go into business after business and I talk to business owners around what their blueprint for their organizational structure is going to look like, they either don't have it documented, they don't have it documented well, or they are not thinking about what that org structure needs to look like to get to the next level of performance. And so really thinking and spending a lot of time, creating your own organizational blueprint, similar to building a house, is a really important part of continuing to grow your business. And so, that's something that, I just don't think that enough small and mid-sized businesses spend enough time doing. The next part of it is really how do I continue to merge my culture? So my culture typically emanates from the owners. It's who they are, it's how they operate, those kind of things. And that's great, but as the business continues to grow and I start to add more people to the business, as I start to add multiple offices, as I start to add multiple service lines, everything becomes more complex. So how do I keep a consistent culture? How to evolve a culture? Because maybe my culture needs to evolve a bit because what worked at the lower level of performance isn't going to work at higher levels of performance. So how do I really understand and get very specific about defining what I want my culture to look like? And then how do we embed that culture in my business every day? So embedding the culture in the business every day to drive decision-making around who comes into the business, who leaves the business, those kind of things is a really big part of the leadership team continue to drive the evolution and growth of the business. And then the last thing I'll talk about around leadership and culture is delegation. And so what's really hard is that as we grow as a business and as we add more people to the business, that I just can't do it all myself. I need to add additional capability into the business. I need to have people that can actually deliver results for me versus me doing that myself, and that becomes a big struggle for organizations in that first and second barrier, is how do I actually start to delegate effectively? Some of that is around, it could be around tasks or specific initiatives that in my job description, I'm going to delegate to somebody else because I don't have time for it. Eventually, that delegation becomes part of my organizational design where I'm now starting to design new roles in the business, and I'm taking things that were maybe a part of my role and I'm going to delegate those to a different role, to something different in the organization because I really should spend my time in these kind of core areas. And so really getting focused on delegation and getting really good at delegation is important. And then the question I like to ask around delegation and why, and it's one of the most important leadership skills that we all have to get good at is, first of all, where do we learn about it at? And I talk to a lot of people about this, and it's interesting that we don't really learn about it in school. You go to college, you get an advanced degree. They don't teach about delegation. If you go talk to anybody about where they were taught delegation in the working environment, there's really nobody teaching you delegation. So we probably learn about delegation to work by observing it. Some of it good, probably most of it really bad. But I think we probably learned about delegation mostly at home. And it's really more of a command and control type of delegation, right? Cut the grass, do the dishes, clean your room, all that kind of stuff. And that probably doesn't work in the real world. So delegation isn't something we're really good at. And the other part of it is why is it so tough? It's because there's these kind of 2, 3, 4, or 5 reasons that we hear why it's so tough. Is that one, I don't have anybody to delegate to. Maybe you're a small organization or a small function, and you don't have anybody to delegate to, so that could happen. Maybe it's that you don't trust it's going to get done right. That's a leadership issue. So as a leader, we need to create the circumstances where I can start to put my people in a position to be successful. Another key one that we see a lot is that it's not going to be done my way. Top performing leaders get out of the way, and what they care about most is the business results. Obviously, it's got to fit within the culture. But if I have people who are going to get something done and they're going to get it done in a different way, I have to be okay with that. So again, I have to be able to kind of remove myself from that command and control leadership and become an effective delegator and put people in a position to deliver business results. So one of the things that we'll talk about real quick now is, what are some of the core components to being an effective delegator? And on the right, you see great leaders delegate results, not tasks. That kind of ties into what we just talked about. There's really 4 key components to being an effective delegator. The first is delegation most times is actually reactively done. It's something in the heat of the moment. I need something done. I'm going to call somebody in my office and I'm going to have them do whatever it is that they need to do. But really effective delegation is it's a proactive process. So as a leader, I'm actually taking the time to think about, all right, what is it that I want to delegate? And I want to get really specific around pinpointing what does success look like. So much so that when Joe, who I'm going to delegate to, that when I ask Joe what it is that I asked him to do, he can actually repeat back to me exactly what I need him to do. So if getting really good at pinpointing what is that I need to do, I'm really effectively painting a picture in Joe's head what does success look like. And the question I'm going to ask Joe is repeat back to me what is it that I've asked you to do. So I want Joe to really I want to set Joe up for success. And what was interesting is I didn't realize what a bad delegator I was until somebody actually taught me this process 10 years ago or so. But I just kind of threw everything at everybody and hoped that they could go make it happen. But the thing around really pinpointing and asking for do people have clarity around what is it that I need them to do is that, I want people to do A, work on something that's 100% of what I need them to do versus A, work on something that's 50% of what I need to do. So I need to make sure that I'm getting very clear about what is it that I need to get done, what does success look like, and painting a picture in their head of what that looks like, and then asking for them to provide that response back to me as exactly what do they need to get done. The next is, so feedback. So when we talk about trust, the way that we manage around trust, I don't trust it's going to get done right, is by actually putting different feedback loops into place. So different people have different levels of trust with. So Joe's somebody that I've delegated a lot to. I have great confidence that Joe's going to knock the cover off the ball. Maybe the feedback loop for Joe is going to be, 2 weeks from now or a month from now, whatever it is, based on what it is I'm delegating. But maybe Susie's a new leader, and she's somebody that we want to continue to grow capability in the business. Maybe her feedback loop is going to be weekly or every 3 days or something like that. And so I'm really thinking about who it is that I'm delegating to, and then what really specific feedback loop that I want to put in place for that person so that we stay on course. So this is really around an agile process. And again, proactively, I'm thinking about what that feedback mechanism is going to look like. And I'm designing a different feedback mechanism based on who it is that I'm delegating to. The next is what's the risk tolerance? And so, there's going to be certain things that could occur that I need to be made aware of that. And so, again, thinking proactively about this helps to put the delegatee into a much more successful position. So maybe a key customer is going to be affected, or maybe what you're delegating is over budget by a certain amount of money, or an employee's been affected, or it's not creating a safe environment, wherever it is. But you're thinking about those things, and then you're laying out those risk tolerances. And so when you bring Susie in to actually delegate and have a conversation on delegating, you're actually you're building that into it so she knows when to come to you. And I think another key thing around delegation is actually providing recognition. So we all need recognition. Every single one of us on the call needs recognition that the work that we're doing is valuable, that we're a valuable member part of the team, and that we need to recognize others in their work. And so it's important to continue to provide recognition for great work. The other part of the around delegation too is asking this question. So a lot of times what happens is we delegate stuff to people and we don't ask them what are the other priorities that they have on their desk today. So if I can only manage 10 priorities and now you've just given me 11th and I can't manage to get all those done, I'm not setting up my delegatee to be effective. And so as a leader, my job is to make sure that they're working on things that are most important for me and for the business right now. So it's really asking those questions and making sure that they're working on the most important things right now and not setting them up to fail. The last thing around delegation that's important is is what I see oftentimes in businesses is what I consider upward delegation from a decision-making perspective. So what's happening is if you have an open door policy in your business, a lot of times people are coming into your office, or today maybe they're coming into Zoom or calling you and saying, hey, what do you think about this? And if you're the leader, they're coming in and they're actually delegating decision-making to you. As a leader, our job is to grow leadership capability all the time. And so we have to, our response to that is, I don't know, what do you think? And what that's important is that I don't want people delegating decision-making on me. I want people to come into my office and I want them to think through a couple different solutions, 2 or 3 different solutions to the problem. My job as a leader is to ask clarifying questions, and hopefully through that questioning process and then coming into my office with different solutions, that we actually get to a solution that works the best. But really focusing on delegating effectively and eliminating upward delegation in the business is an important component to continuing to grow leadership capability in your business. And this isn't going through, lots of formal training to do it, but that's just stuff that happens in our business every day that we have opportunities to grow our capability in our business. Next is really what should our leadership team really focus their time on? And this slide is from Patrick Lencioni's The 4 Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive. And Patrick's my favorite business author. It's just a phenomenal book. If you haven't read it, it's an important book to read. But the first thing that Lencioni would tell you is that the first thing that you're focusing on is building and maintaining a cohesive leadership team. That could be at the enterprise level, it could be at the functional level. It's really constantly building and maintaining a cohesive leadership team. It's getting that team to really work as a team. It's getting people that are okay with healthy conflict. It's building a team that's okay with creating accountability, that they're willing to create accountability, they're willing to be accountable, they're willing to hold their other leaders on their team to be accountable. They're willing to disagree but commit, which means that we've talked about things a lot. We've vetted it out. We've had really thoughtful conversation, and maybe I don't get all my ideas implemented, but when we move ahead as an organization, even though I don't agree with maybe what direction we're going, I disagree, but I commit. So I'm completely committed from a leadership perspective to where we're going organizationally. Why that's important is that the minute that you have any splintering in your organization around where you're going and why you're going there, and it's not communicated effectively either through words or actions or demeanor, even seeing a leader come out of a meeting and not be fully bought in, and kind of exemplifying that from a emotional perspective, what that looks like, it's really affecting your ability for your organization to be successful. So that cohesive leadership team work never gets done. It's constantly worked on. And the other thing I would tell you is that when you think about building a cohesive leadership team, one of the things is constantly looking to continue to add talent to your business. One of the key things that happens from a leadership perspective in businesses is that the people that help you get to one level of performance oftentimes aren't the same people who help you get to the next level of performance. Doesn't mean they have to leave the business, doesn't mean they're bad people, but the business now requires different things. And the reality is the Peters principle is alive and well in corporate America. And the reality is roles outgrow people, people don't outgrow roles. So building and maintaining a cohesive leadership team, it's a really important part of that is really making sure you got the right people on the team. Next is creating organizational clarity. So that's our core ideology, what's our mission, purpose, values, what businesses are we in, what's our value proposition, who's an ideal client, why do we go after those clients, how do we operate as a business. And when I talk about creating organizational clarity, one of the first questions when I go to work with a client is I'll go down to the individual contributor level and I'll ask an individual contributor, what are the 2 things that you get paid to do? And so an interesting thing is that the Gallup organization and their employee engagement survey, the Q12, the first question they ask is, do I know what's expected of me? And you get the next question is, do I have the materials and equipment I need to do my job? What's interesting about the Gallup survey is that people don't get to higher levels of engagement around organizational purpose and mission unless they get lower level needs around, I know what's expected of me and I have the materials and equipment I need to do my job. So from an organizational clarity perspective, if I go talk to people in the business and I ask the same people, if I ask people in the same role, the question around what are the 2 things that you get paid to do, and I get different answers, I have an organizational clarity issue. And so as a leader, my job is to always create organizational clarity. And here's what happens in business. So I have people working in a role, maybe they work in a role for 6 months or 6 years. What happens is the job description that I have in place has changed. Oftentimes it's changed. And the things that I'm doing right now are different, or the metrics that I'm getting measured my success on are different than what my job description looks like. So I have people kind of working in the same role, doing different things all over the place. And so leadership is making sure that my people are working on the right things all the time. So going and asking that question, what are the 2 most important things that you do to create a paycheck, gives you real perspective and insight into how your organization is performing, what kind of clarity you have, what kind of work do you have to do around creating that organizational clarity. Again, because if people don't know what's expected of them, and that really relates to what are the things in my job that I need to do in order to get a paycheck, I can't perform an organization at the highest level. So really spending your time there is important. The next around organizational clarity is really making sure, and this kind of ties into my comments around delegation, is making sure that people are working on the right thing. So, my leadership style is if I have a leader and they're running a division or they're running an operation or wherever it is and they're delivering business results, my job is really to kind of get out of the way and provide support and look at what resources they need in order to continue to grow their span of control. But when they're not performing at the level that they need to, and a real-world example I have is that a guy that was running a division for me. It was a $50 million division. It was run by another leader. That leader left the organization. We went out and did a search, brought in another leader, screwed up the hire, but brought this guy in and tried to make him successful. And 6 to 12 months down the line, our revenue had gone from $15 million to $12 million, and our profit had reduced by about a third. And so we had some issues. And so as we sat down and started to talk about what were the most important things that this gentleman needed to get done in the next 90 days, it was interesting. We had a different approach. So I actually had my strategic advisor in the middle of the conversation helping to facilitate it. And, the first thing he said, John, so what do you think are the top 5 things that Joe needs to get done in the next 90 days in order to turn the business around and perform at a higher level? And, Joe, what are the 5 things you think you need to do in the next, the next 90 days in order to perform at a higher level? So let's go take 10 or 15 minutes and figure that out. So we go away for 10 or 15 minutes. We come back. He has his list. I have my list. And between the 2 of us, we have about 8 things. So our advisor kind of whittles it down. We end up with 5 things. And then Mike says, all right, I'd like you to prioritize what's the most important priority, what's the least important priority. Each of you would like to do that. So we go through that process. It takes another 10 minutes. And as we sit down to go over the results, my number 1 is Joe's number 5, and Joe's number 1 is my number 5. If Joe's hitting the cover off the ball, I'm fine with his 5. I don't really care, but he's not hitting the cover off the ball. So we need a strategy that's really going to work effectively for our organization. And I'm okay having a conversation on kind of commingling our list a little bit, but it's going to have to be more the way that I need you to get it done, because your method isn't getting it done right now, and we need to deliver business results. And so what happened was, interestingly, over another 60-day period, we tried to work on this alignment. I could never get Joe to really align with what we needed to do in order for the business to be successful, and had to remove him. And so that organizational clarity, that stuff's happening in everybody's business every day. We can't spend enough time making sure that our people are working on the right things. The next thing is really over-communicating organizational clarity, and I talked about that a couple slides ago. It takes the average person 7 times to hear we said. That data's been around for a long time in the marketing and advertising world, and so it's around impressions. So we know that it takes 7 impressions for somebody to really hear what you had to say. And the interesting thing about that is that I'm a leader that I take pride in getting something the first time somebody tells me something. So my own weakness as a leader is that I thought I communicated one time, and email's not an effective communication strategy. I communicated with everybody one time, we're ready to go. It's not nearly enough. I have to be exhausted and sick of talking about it, is really what it looks like. You just have to constantly be communicating a very poignant message constantly, so that people really understand what are we about as an organization, where we're going. And then the last thing is really, how do we reinforce all this through human systems? So things like incentive packages, hiring practices, how are we building core values into our business? There's lots of different human systems. But the thing I really like to talk about here is really performance management. And, how many organizations are, excuse me, are really building a robust performance management system in their business? And in my analogy I like to talk about around performance management isn't really effective if it's managed once a year, twice a year. And my example is if you were a athlete, if you played a sport in any way, or you were a dancer, you were a musician, or you're on the debate team. And my thing is, how often did you receive coaching? And the answer is really constantly. You always were receiving feedback around how you were performing. So I was a basketball player. And, my coach was setting the tone for everything. Who was on the team, what position you're going to play, what was the rotation, what were the offensive and defensive plays. You're getting real-time feedback around how you're performing, how the team was performing, what the culture of the team was. That was happening every practice. That was happening every game. And so you're getting that real-time feedback. And then my thing is we go in the work world and we're getting feedback around our performance once a year or twice a year. Now, 90 days is better, but top-performing organizations today, they're actually building coaching systems, performance management systems in place that are happening every 30 days. So people have real-time feedback around where they're at, what they need to work on, how they're performing well. And the last thing I'll say about around performance management is I'm a big fan of a guy named Matthew Kelly who wrote the book, The Dream Manager. And why that's important is that, people come to work for us for a reason. If people won the lottery or they inherited a bunch of money, there's a really great likelihood that most people don't show up for work tomorrow. So if they inherited or won difference-making money, they don't need the money. There's a high percentage of those people aren't going to come to work tomorrow. And so what that means to me is that people come to work for us because they need a job. And so if we're really effective as leaders, we need to really start to understand our people. We need to know why they come to work for our organization. We need to know about their families. We need to know about what their struggles are. And we need to know what their goals are. We need to know what their dreams are. If they don't have goals and they don't have dreams, we should help them create goals and dreams. So the more that we know about who they are, the more we know about what they want to accomplish, the more we help them think about what they want to accomplish. That might mean, sending their kids to private school, or it might mean having the first child in their family get a college degree, or it might mean buying a wedding ring, or whatever it is. But the more that we know on what our people are doing and why they come to work for our organization, and the more I can help them accomplish their personal goals, when I ask them to run through glass for me, the better they perform. So the better job that I can do of really helping them achieve those things, when I have to have really accountable conversations, when I have to have those coaching conversations, and they know it's about them, not me, the better they receive that information and the better they perform. So as a leader, I have to get really good at that. And performance management system is really driving and creating that culture within the organization. So my last slide is actually a tool that I use with my clients. It's called Coaching for Results. And what that does is really builds in my approach to coaching and performance management. So what it integrates is what are the most important metrics that someone needs to demonstrate in a role? What's their performance look like in whatever the time frame is in coaching? What are their personal goals? What are the things that they want to make happen in those time frames? What are the top 5 areas of focus to drive performance? What are the most important actions to deliver results? And what are the specific things that they need to do? What barriers and roadblocks need to be removed by the leader? And then what's their personal development plan? This is especially important for me for leaders. If my leaders and my teams aren't invested in development themselves, they're not a leader in my organization. You want to be lead people in the organizations I'm part of. You have to want to sign up, and you have to want to better yourself. You have to want to improve. And so the way that this process works is this is a normal rhythm, right? So I've done this with salespeople. This is a weekly rhythm. In other positions, it's happening every couple of weeks. I actually do this with my clients right now with the CEO and his direct reports once a month. And so the way this works is you kind of establish this cadence. A really important part of it is every role in the business has to have a metric or metrics that demonstrate performance in the role. Everybody's got to have clarity around that. So if you're the vice president of sales, the most important metric for you in your role is gross margin, and net promoter score, as an example. You got to know those. And when you come in and meet with me, you're going to bring the data. I'm not providing you the data. I want you to own the data. So your performance in the last 7 days, 30 days, wherever that is, that rhythm we're meeting, I want you to own the data, and you're going to bring it in, and we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to understand what are your personal goals. So what are the things that you want to make happen, wherever that time frame is. So you want to save $1,000 in your 401k, or you want to lose, 15 pounds, wherever it is. We're going to talk about that in every meeting with them. The 5 areas of focus are really around more of the job description components of it. So what are the 5 big areas that you should be spending your time on? And my belief system is there shouldn't be any more than 5 big areas that you spend your time on. It's really hard to do anything more than 5 areas, and if it is, if you're spending time in other areas, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then maybe that's an opportunity to create a new role or you start to delegate. But what are the 5 things that I'm responsible for focusing my time on? And then what are the actions that need to happen? So getting very specific on what actions need to happen between now and when we meet next. And then the PDP stuff, we're getting to what are the specific things that you think that you should read. I'll make some recommendations to them what they should read. What are the things that we should improve? And, a lot of times what people say is this looks like micromanagement. From my perspective, this isn't micromanagement at all. My communication to people is this, is that I'm doing everything I can to set you up to be successful. The better job I do of helping to create clarity around what are the most important things that you get measured on within your role, and the better job that we create alignment on what are the things that you should be doing to make that happen, the better we perform. And so my role as a leader is to help you perform. How I get judged as a leader is the results of my team. So the better I get at coaching and creating clarity and holding people accountable and holding them accountable because they trust me, they know that I'm in it for them, the better my business results are. And the last is success is not guaranteed, so enjoy the journey. And I think we felt that in the last 6 weeks. It's been up and down. Again, leadership is around knowing when we're in that valley of despair that we remove ourselves from that situation. We inspire ourselves. We move ahead to provide an environment that's a conducive one for our teams. And enjoy the journey. Make the best of each day. Any questions?
Hi, John. Yeah, we do have a few questions.
Okay.
The first one was, earlier you mentioned the daily check-in, the in and out.
Yes. Yes.
Do you think that should be done by email, or should it actually be a phone call or maybe like a team meeting or Zoom meeting?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of email for much of anything, especially around Teams. So the daily check-in is something that is really powerful. If you go around it and actually time it, and I do this a lot with my clients, so we'll do a daily check-in when we start a session. I'll pull out a phone and have everybody talk about what's on their plate today, where they're stuck, and where they need help. And so you can do that through Zoom. I've had a lot of people before we hit COVID ask me, how do we do that when everybody's not in the office every day? Well, nobody's in the office every day, so I think that's really appropriate. So it's using, a Zoom platform or Teams or even a conference call, but it's really around creating connectivity. It's really getting, we're missing that banter, the usual office banter that occurs. So yeah, it's getting people talking to each other, trying to create that connection to team members.
Okay. Another question was, what should a company do if they have an employee that wants to stay remote after the COVID is over because they feel that they work better at home than they do in the office?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a new norm. A lot of I've been in businesses and I work with a lot of businesses that ownership is not a fan of remote work, and the reason that they're not a fan of remote work is because they want to see where everybody's at, and part of it is that that makes them feel good that everybody's here working every day, and a lot of it's FaceTime. So I show up at 8 and I work till 5, and hopefully I did my work today. But those don't always happen because I'm not looking at the results that people need to deliver every day or every week, wherever that time frame is. But I think that's going to be a new norm, and I think that's part of the culture evolution. That actually I didn't talk about that in the leadership and culture slide, but I think a big part of it is that there's going to be a lot of people that don't want to come back to work because they don't feel safe, and so that goes to that first Gallup slide. I think we have to think about how do we create a safe environment, what does that look like, but still people aren't going to want to come back, and so that's going to create stresses and pressure on our organizations because we need those people to get the job done. So I think it's really around, I think this is going to be a huge time of culture evolution where leaders are going to have to get much better at leading remote teams, communicating with remote teams, making okay that not everybody's in the office every day. And, hopefully we can get back to some form of that's okay and it's safe to make that happen, but none of us know what that looks like. So this is really around again, going back to my Barriers to Growth slide, this is really around culture evolution and the things that we're going to have to do to get from kind of the current state to the future state, not the barriers, is we're going to have to evolve our culture and our leadership styles to make that happen. And, it's really around the business results. So, my thing on business is, I want people to fit our culture. I measure culture by your fit with our core values. We're embedding core values in the business, and we're measuring your alignment with our core values all the time, really frequently. And the other one is that we're actually measuring your business results. So that goes back to the metric thing I talked about in my coaching form. People that are in my business that are really high culture fit and delivering unbelievable business results, I'm going to do everything I can to keep those people in the business. So we're going to have to evolve our culture, and it's all around driving business results. So if my team and the people in my teams are accomplishing those goals, then I'm going to have to be okay with this is a different culture way that we're going to operate for a while, because we're not going to be able to force it, I don't think.
Thank you. You actually answered part of the other question we had, so I won't go into that.
Okay.
I just want to thank you for your presentation today. As a reminder to our participants, please fill out the survey that will be emailed to you later this afternoon. This will be the only way you'll be able to receive your 1-hour credit for SHRM or HRCI if you need it. Today's webinar recording will be available next week on the Best and Brightest website. You can also register for any of our upcoming webinars here as well. John, we have one more quick question if it's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
It says, we are in uncharted territory. One of our concerns is how do we handle our teams engaged with the resurgence?
So is that question, is that if we experience, so if we go back to work and we see some resurgence in the fall, is that the basis of the question, Judy?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I think it kind of ties into that last question that I just kind of answered. I think it's preparing for a new normal for quite a while. We're just not going to get back to, I think, getting back in the full work world the way that we thought this year. I saw some guidance yesterday from, I don't know, somebody on President Trump's staff that they don't see international travel resuming this year. And in all my conversations with all my executive clients and CEO clients, I mean, that's really what they're preparing for, is that we're going to have to operate differently. A big part of what they're doing actually right now is looking at their strategic offerings and how do they change and evolve what they deliver to their clients, products and services, to be able to take advantage of new opportunities that are being created. So they're operating very nimbly right now without a tremendous amount of kind of structure getting in the way. They're just going, being very market driven right now. But I think it's really around answering those kind of 4 questions that Gallup had at the top, and then I think it's really evolving your culture, and then actually you building and making sure you're spending time with your leaders that are managing, individual contributors to really evolve their skill set to be able to manage and lead in a different world. It's a challenge for a lot of people. They haven't done it. They're used to people being in their office every day, and so I think it's really, again, evolving that culture and defining what that looks like and what you expect from your leaders, how they're going to behave and what they're going to communicate, and creating different protocols for all that.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for everything you did for us today. Thank you to everyone who joined us. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Be safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.